ALS has been one of my favorite anime tower defense games for a long time. Now, were the updates kinda slop? Yeah, they were. But it was good, reliable slop. Every single week, I knew I could log in, set up a farm, AFK overnight, wake up to progress. It definitely wasn't the best tower defense game out there, but it would be hard not to think of it every time you heard the words anime tower defense. It was like this for a long time, but as you know, all good things, or not so good things, come to an end. In my opinion, that end started with the 2025 Halloween update. Now, before we get into this quick transition, this update was hyped a lot. We were promised new characters, tradable units, improved capsules, an easy mode for beginners, and tons of rewards. And honestly, to be fair, this update did not disappoint. At first, the new mode was easy to beat and easy to AFK, great for new players and great for veterans. But there were two problems: the characters and the capsules. The characters were insanely overpowered. Lelouch could deal 50% max HP damage. Death the Kid was hitting quadrillions with his nukes. These weren't strong units, these were broken units. And then there were the capsules. They gave an unholy amount of essence, and they introduced a brand new item, the glitched pity potion. This item let you guarantee a glitch rate at 1,000 rerolls. That single item pretty much broke the game. This is where the first crack appeared, and most people didn't notice it yet. The next update was Tokyo Ghoul, and compared to Halloween, it was underwhelming. The new characters were nowhere near as strong as the Halloween ones. Now, that might sound like a good thing, and normally it would be, but what it really showed was just how broken the Halloween units already were. The baseline had been completely destroyed, and now every future unit would be judged against that. After Tokyo Ghoul, we got the Rimuru Godly and Halloween Part 2 update. And this was basically Halloween Part 1, but on steroids. Godly Rimuru was insanely broken. He applied so many types of DOT damage that I literally made an entire Google Doc just trying to calculate what his damage actually was. But that wasn't even the biggest problem. The Halloween event itself was the real issue. They made getting capsules even easier this time around, so people got even more resources, and the economy, which was already shaky, got permanently inflated. Permanently. I barely even played that event, and I still ended up with over 10,000 of each essence and over 50 glitch pity potions. That should never happen. So why did the devs do this? They did this because they saw the player count hit around 140,000 players, and they thought they were geniuses. What they didn't realize was that a massive portion of those players were alt accounts, just farming, not real engagement. And instead of investigating that, they doubled down and permanently destroyed their own game. Update 74.5 was their first Extreme Boost update. And I mean, I guess it was fine, but it has to be the biggest slop imaginable. All they did was change the passives on already existing units and called it an update. No new mechanics, no new systems, no new map, no new story. Just, here are some numbers that are slightly different on units you already have. And the worst part, whenever they ran out of ideas going forward, they just did it again. The Extreme Boost update became their go-to filler, their get out of jail free card. Update 75 was the last Halloween update. It added candy as a currency, and wow, a new Goku Godly skin, so cool, very exciting. If you couldn't tell, I'm being sarcastic. More importantly, they added another passive way to generate even more capsules just by playing. More resources, more inflation, more power creep, same loop. At this point, the formula was basically release event, flood players with resources, move on. and nobody seemed to be questioning whether this was sustainable. Next was the ReZero update, which pushed the power creep even further. Some units can now reach 1 SPA, basically attacking instantly. And then, another Extreme Boost update. Again, no new system, no new mechanics, just more power creep. At this point, the devs were basically just adding a 0 to every number and shipping it. Update 77 introduced Simon, a new godly with a somewhat difficult obtainment method. Well, not really difficult if you had Grammy, but they tried. Player count spiked to 69,000 on release, and dropped to 20,000 3 days later. That's the signal. That number tells you everything. People showed up out of habit or hype, and then they left, because there was nothing keeping them there. At this point, almost every new unit was doing percentage HP damage. The damage numbers were becoming meaningless. Okay, let's stop for a second, and just take stock of where we are. The 3 different Halloween events, gone. Player count much lower than the 140,000 peak. The game's economy completely destroyed. Units doing trillions of damage per attack. So, what do you think the next update should be? A. Hard economy reset. B. Balancing and damage scaling fix. C. Give up on the game because the devs clearly aren't built for this. Or D. Spend 6 days designing a new event that is almost identical to the Halloween event that destroyed your game and make it slightly harder AFK. The devs chose D. The Thanksgiving update dropped with an event that gave pretty much the same rewards as the Halloween event. This time, it was slightly harder and it used crates instead of capsules. It also added the ability to increase your unit's level cap. And, surprise, another Extreme Boost update with throwaway characters that pretty much all did percentage HP damage. Same formula, different skin, shipped. And then, can you guess what the next update was? The Winter update. Wow. Another AFKable game mode, more crates, another level cap increase, more power creep. The only semi-decent thing about this update, and I mean the only thing, is they finally added a new farm after over a year. At this point, players had hundreds of thousands of trade rerolls sitting in their inventories. Hundreds of thousands. The last update of the year was Winter Souls. It added an even better farming mode that gave even more crates. Players now had so many crates, they had to AFK overnight just to open them. And the devs, despite players begging, did not speed up the crate opening process at all. I had friends who owned millions of trait rerolls. Millions! But the resource inflation wasn't even the worst part of the update. It was the units. They added 5 Extreme Boost units, but 2 of them were in a completely different category. Guts and Yuji. These 2 units single-handedly made the power creep problem 100 times worse. They scaled infinitely with enemy HP and could hit quintillions of damage. It got so bad that the devs actually stepped in and nerfed Yuji, removed half his passives, and he was still overpowered. I'm getting worked up just going through this again. It was genuinely that bad. Then the game went quiet. 30 days, no update. Meanwhile, the broken farming modes were still live. Players were still grinding them every single day. The devs eventually came out and addressed the delay. Brandon said they've been working non-stop, even skipping holidays. That they had to hire and train an entirely new team after previous developers left or caused issues. That the new team had to learn a massive, complex codebase from scratch. That they're restructuring to make sure it won't happen again. And look, I'll be fair, that's genuinely rough. Running a live game with a shifting dev team is hard. But here's the thing devs need to understand. Effort and intent do not automatically lead to good results. Players judge the game by what actually gets delivered, not by how many hours you put in, not by how much money you invested, not by how much you care. If updates are still slow and they still make things worse, broken economy, worse power creep, then the core issue isn't dedication. The core issue is direction and decision making. And putting more money and resources into a game that keeps getting worse doesn't fix the problem. It just raises expectations and makes the failures hit harder. Also, spoiler, Brandon says this restructuring will prevent it from happening again. It happens again. The big update finally drops, and it introduces a brand new rarity, Last Standian, which I have to say is one of the worst names I've heard in my life. Last Standian. Who approved that? They also released a new godly, Beast Gohan vs. Cell, alongside the coronation event. The obtainment method was basically identical to how you get Rimuru, so nothing new there. The new units were Beast Gohan, Piccolo, and Buhan. Buhan could clone himself, apply tons of DOT effects, and hit trillions. Piccolo scaled himself to quadrillions, and Beast Gohan, he only did 12 billion damage, with a 50 million crit multiplier. You guys thought I was gonna stop there? Nah, he was busted. But none of those were the main unit of the update. That goes to Last Standian Transcended UI Goku. Let me just list what this unit does. He clones himself up to 20 times. He is completely immune to stuns and debuffs. He applies an effect that makes every single unit deal 400% more damage. He has infinite range in full AoE. He drains 1.5 HP per tick. And he can set his own damage to 1 sextillion. That is 10 to the power of 21. For context, that is 14,000 times the age of our universe. And you can literally buy all of his evolution materials with Robux. Oh, and the stage to unlock him was so buggy that it accidentally gave players one of his evil materials for free. I am so done with this game. The next two updates were another extreme boost and the Gachiaket update. Pretty minor, not much real content, because everything was pointing towards World 3 and full economic reset. Which, by the way, the devs announcing an economic reset is basically them admitting they gave everyone millions of rerolls on purpose and now they have to undo it. Great planning, guys. After that came the Valentine's update. Small, seasonal, similar to everything else. The difference this time was the devs were basically begging people to play it. They kept saying how important this update was for World 3 preparation, which really just means please keep our player count up until the big thing drops. Then began the wait for World 3. Over 2 months of hype, constant dev posts, teaser content. They even made it so players could sit in an AFK chamber to earn World 3 rerolls ahead of time. Which sounds generous, but really it was just another way to keep players logged in and keep the premium payout numbers looking good. For reference, Anime Vanguards had players waiting 6 months for their big update. And while it wasn't perfect, it was a genuinely solid release with lots of content to play while you waited. That is the bar ALS is trying to hit. A week before World 3 released, Early Access went live. There were 2 ways to get it. Either be a content creator, which I guess I'm not, because, or sit in the AFK chamber and hope for a 5% drop with a cap of 500 users. The cap was hit within 24 hours, so they removed it. That just goes to show how much hype this update was. But the Early Access World 3 was terrible. Tons of bugs. Units were not scaled properly with the enemies. The map was literally pulled straight from the World 1 asset folder. They just copy and pasted it. Almost every unit was ground, even though there were air enemies from Wave 1. Progression was completely impossible. If you tried to bring your old units over, their damage was hard capped. They lost their passives, and upgrading them didn't change stats. Even the Valentine's unit, the ones the devs hyped as important, barely did more damage than anything else. And the rarest unit from that event, Maki and Yuta literally did 0 damage because their passive to separate was just gone now. The only unit that was even usable was Gremmy because he cost 100 to place. It was literally the only way to beat story, legend stages, and caverns. So what did the devs do? They nerfed him. They removed the one thing players could use to actually progress. But okay, it's early access. Surely they'll fix all of this before the full release, right? It was the same unreleased. Almost everything was identical. This heavily anticipated update that players had been waiting 2 months for went from 30,000 players on release to 7,000 in under 3 hours. Currently, it's at 4,000. When I logged in, I noticed more people were still playing World 2 than World 3. How do you spend 2 months hyping something, have people genuinely excited, and then release something this unfinished? And look, Universal Tower Defense is putting out weekly updates with higher quality content on a fraction of the budget. That's the comparison players are making. Brandon will probably say again that the devs betrayed him and he had to hire new ones. But if this keeps happening to you, at some point, you have to stop and ask, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe the problem is me. There are entire videos on YouTube going through every single World 3 issue in detail. I'm not going to do that, but I will give you the biggest ones because they are important. Almost every unit comes from banners with no alternative. Almost every unit is ground. Units have terrible range. Some hill units can't even hit the path they're supposed to cover. The money trait gives a 10% income boost at a 0.2% chance. Completely useless. The farm has 4 placements, barely generates income, and usually you don't have enough money to survive the first few waves. Elemental Cavern is too hard, legend stages are too hard, story mode is too hard, all content in the game is too hard or nigh impossible. Unit passives do basically nothing, AoE is terrible, many units are single target, which is stupid, attack speed is too slow compared to unit range, so enemies walk out of range before the unit even fires once. I could keep going, but there's so much to cover on this that it'd be a 50-minute video. And while I was writing this, they released a bounce patch, but it just nerfed the stages. It didn't fix the actual problem, which is the units themselves are just bad. These are some of the worst units I've seen in any tower defense game. ALS didn't fall because of one bad update. It fell because of a pattern. A pattern of chasing player counts instead of actually fixing problems. Of running the same event formula over and over until players were numb to it. Of releasing broken units, then releasing even more broken units to replace them. Of promising restructuring, then having to restructure again. They didn't lose the players all at once. They lost them one lazy update at a time. And the frustrating thing is, this game has bones. It has real potential. The core loop of ALS is fun. Tower defense with anime characters, AFK farming, trait grinding, genuinely a good concept. But a good foundation means nothing if every single update you build on top of it makes it worse. I actually want ALS to succeed. I just don't think the current direction gets it there. And at this point, I think a lot of the community agrees. But that's just my take on all of this. When do you think ALS really fell off? Let me know in the comments. Was it the Halloween economy disaster? The World 3 release? Something in between? And if you want to see more content like this, like and subscribe. Because, yeah, videos like this take a long time to make. Until the next one.